Going through the court system can be traumatic and confusing for people with autism and their families. Pennsylvania is the first and only state working to create change for those on the spectrum, with judges, staff, and advocates working together. Supreme Court Justice Kevin Dougherty joins us now to discuss the efforts. Thank you so much for making time for us today.
No, thank you for permitting us to share our story.
Well, and you're actually in town because of this today.
Correct. I was in town this week because the Supreme Court sat, but today was the first annual Western Summit regarding autism awareness, and it was chaired by 3 Pittsburgh judges, and it was a well-attended event.
Wonderful. And how did you get down this path? What drove you to want to make changes to the court system?
Well, it's interesting. The genesis of this is when I was a judge sitting in dependency court and delinquency court. I had a case before me, and after I convicted the child, I had to determine whether the child needed treatment supervision. And part of the concern that I had is that in Philadelphia we have many of our children are children of color, and it was a child of color, and the child started to show some concerns, some communication errors, refused to look me in the eye. It was behaviors that I indicated as being somewhat incorrigible, and I was ready to adjudge him delinquent, which would have convicted him to be a felon the rest of his life.
Wow.
Well, that being said, at one point his mom was present. I said, look at your mom and look at me. At that point, Mom called me to the sidebar. And now, mind you, this is in the early 2000s. I thought I was a pretty progressive, forward-thinking guy. She said, excuse his behavior, he's Asperger's. And it was like a punch in my stomach. I said, what is Asperger's?
Wow, yeah.
And I thought, my God, if I don't know this, how can I really be dispensing justice? I was fortunate that I thought self-reform through self-education. I had the benefit of running the Philadelphia court system in juvenile, so I thought, hey, if we could do self-education and it leads to personal reform, why don't I just do judicial reform?
Yeah.
So that's what I've done throughout Philadelphia. But with the commitment and the encouragement of our Chief Justice, Pittsburgh's own Deborah Todd, our court now is committed to ensuring that anybody that enters our court doors can be ready, willing, and able to meet the necessary needs of the population who we serve.
And so this is a broad effort. You want to make sure that there's education, there are advocates.
Correct.
And that everybody's kind of on board with what this means. So if somebody is on the spectrum, comes into the court system, how is this different from how it was maybe 20 years ago?
How it was 20 years ago was that there was nothing available. What we found out in a recent study from 2018 that just was released based upon 2020 statistics, 1 in 36 children are diagnosed with autism.
Isn't that wild?
1 in 44 adults. Now, what I always say, the operative word is diagnosed. When you come into the court system, you are probably at your most vulnerable. And the individuals that happen to come through our doors, particularly in child welfare, they're the least educated. There are some concerns about the type of parenting. They don't have insurance, so they're not diagnosed.
Right. And
as a result, I think as a result of our awareness, we just realized that from 2018 to 29, I think it was 36% of children of color have been diagnosed in the 2 years compared to 14% of white children. Now, that doesn't mean there's something in the air. I think it's because of awareness.
Right.
And that we're finally learning how we could get the natural resources or what is available. How do I help?
Right. And so that's part of this process. So
correct.
If somebody comes into the courts and maybe they have done something wrong, do they then get resources as opposed to punishment, or how does that work?
Well, that's a great question. It happened right before COVID. I decided that I was going to take the show on the road with the permission of our court and the support of my colleagues. So what we were going to do is go around. I was going to do regional tours. Then COVID hit, so we did a virtual tour. And what I did was listen. My comment was, I know that I don't know, and I don't know how to handle this. I don't know what evaluations are required. I don't know what resources are necessary to assist judges. So we did a virtual tour. As a result of that information and a poll within our own judiciary, we found that 81% of our judges who handle child-type cases realized that they had someone in front of them that was on the spectrum, and we didn't know what to do.
Wow.
So what we did was we created a task force. The task force developed an environmental analysis tool They developed educational programs so that we could teach not only the judiciary, but our staff, our employees, and all our system stakeholders. And we're actually applying it. It's interesting, this month is Autism Awareness. Awareness is the first step to change. I'm trying to move it now to autism acceptance. Awareness, that's conversation. Acceptance, that means doing. And I have to tell you, particularly in Pittsburgh, you have a Judge McGrady, that created a sensory room already in our Allegheny County Court, in our Pittsburgh courtroom. This is amazing. So when you say what has changed, God, we jumped and we leaped. This is fantastic.
And is that some of the stuff that you learned today at this first summit?
Oh, absolutely. Today, as I said, was the first summit for the western part of the state. It was amazingly attended, and they had experts that testify, and we're teaching and I shouldn't say testify, educating us. But what it is it's an opportunity for social workers and our children and youth agencies and all our system partners to come together, to learn, to be aware, to communicate, network. And what we're learning is we're now trying to learn the gaps in our system so that we can develop the necessary resources to fill those gaps.
So what's next in all of this?
What's next in all of this is that I hope our system learns to be more understanding and compassionate when it comes to diverse issues and diverse people. I ended my conversation today was, you and I sit here with blue eyes, but if we sit with someone with brown eyes, it makes no difference. So why should it be different if someone has a cognitive difference than I do, if their sensitivities are somewhat different from mine? And I believe that if we can start with autism, it will move on to mental health. It will move on to other disabilities. Maybe we can finally put the just into the justice system.
I love hearing the passion in your voice about this. I know that you're making big changes, so we appreciate all of that.
We are making big changes. It's not a me, it's a we.
It's a we. Thank you so much. What a great conversation.